Test, test, test.
Breaker.
Breaker 19.
Hey,
You got the
going
road
through. Hold on. Let me. Click, click. Now you guys can listen to us because we weren't supposed to be talking during the intro. Hey, Data, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm a little tired.
Yeah, well,
I built a slide today.
you work hard.
I'd try. My kids are happy.
Well, that's good.
My wife is happy. A wild fox just appeared.
Happy wife, happy life.
That's right. That's right. It's very true. She's wearing a very nice dress for me today. I'm gonna enjoy myself.
Really? You're gonna put on a dress for her?
No, she's wearing a nice dress. It's warm outside. It needed to happen. How is everybody tonight? We have ourselves quite the topic. And our topic today comes to us from a viewer from last Saturday's show. We're a little bewildered as to the full context of the issue. As I speak, I am trying to pull up the comment. It was along the lines of Blue Planet Project, was all it said. We will have to check that out. Thank you. NumbedSkull, do. It's really interesting, and I've spoken to ex-military and people who work in government who've actually worked near or around some of the bases that had no idea, but then read the Blue Planet book and made connections to work. What have you found out? Welcome.
Fox, welcome, Daryl.
What have you heard so far? What have you been able to find out through light gleaning?
To be honest, it was spread so far across so many things that it really nothing jumped out. I mean, it's used as a name for a lot of businesses. It's used, there's a story, there's the book, yeah. There. I think there's a movie. It's synonymous for Earth. The blue planet or the blue marble. So, yeah.
Okay. So this is where I get to take you into a dive.
Yes,
this is what I do when you give me a topic on like a Wednesday or a Thursday. And I love it when someone gives me a topic. I've got to look into it and figure out what it is. And it allows me a chance to learn something. And I love that. So I did with this what I normally do. And I tried to watch a few videos. I read a couple of articles when I was sitting. I just kind of soaked up as much information as I could when I wasn't working on something else. So if I sit down to have a cigarette, I'm watching a video. If I'm cutting something and drilling something, there's a video playing and I'm listening to it. Mowing the lawn, I got headphones in. I'm listening to something. That's how I crunch for this show. Okay.
Absorb, SpongeBob.
Okay. We're gonna delve down a rabbit hole that I didn't realize at first I've sort of partially been down before. You know of the base in Dulce, New Mexico, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the one that's what, 6, 7 stories deep, partially controlled by aliens.
Yes.
Experiments are done, telepathy experiments, human abduction projects, things like that.
Yeah, people
It's
also think that when the cows get mutilated, the whatever parts are taken there.
yeah, and
Yeah.
there's some context to the Dulce base, but the Dulce base apparently is one amongst many. And the Blue Planet Project, to what I can gather, is a multinational government organized project started in 1945 and run through till 1946, and then the project changed names in 47. Funding was lost in 60 something, but they didn't shut down. They just weren't allowed to use government facilities and government money. So, okay, I'm
So it
going
went
too far
private.
too fast.
It went private.
Basically, it's kind of private, but there's still government funding in a way. Basically, it is said that there are as many as 160 or more alien species that have been or are on or in contact with planet Earth.
Yes. That's
Okay,
not surprising.
this is what was released in a report from 1984. The report, shit, how many pages was it? I didn't get to look at all of it.
Well,
I found a
yeah,
couple links to it.
you you remember that book I told you about from Smirch?
Vaguely.
The Smirch was the KGB, a upper echelon of the KGB, and the KGB book on aliens. Basically, it showed many different aliens and where they're from and what they're about and if they're friend or foe and when they made contact and all that. And there's a few aliens in that book that call Earth home.
Yeah, you have to wonder about that. So, as I was watching one of the videos, one of them was a documentary I've seen before, except it was cut and clipped, and the way they did it, they just repeated all the way through an hour and 40 minutes of repeating the same like 12 minutes of material in different order.
So
So,
I mean, let's start at let's start at the beginning, not the beginning, but what is Blue Planet's purpose, or what is their goal?
well, again, not diving too deep, but from the best I can gather, the Blue Planet Project purpose, or the information that came out, was around 1945. Before we launched the two blasts on Japan, we had a test in Arizona or New Mexico, and
We
that
had a
test
few.
is said to have centralized out of Area 51. That's where the bombers were, that's where the planes were. Well, once we launched the test, we gathered attention. And then when we launched the two bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that basically called everybody towards us, and aliens began to find Earth. Now, in the Blue Planet Project, let me see if I still have the web pages open on my phone.
I could see why. I mean, not only from space, but actually from different what are they called? Different parallel universes. I could see how a explosion like that could probably be felt, under space, subspace,
Apparently, the way the
intradimensionally.
project says it is we released such a large amount of energy, not just the blast and the capability of destruction, but the yielded energy from the blast is what caught the attention. Because obviously, high energy yield is probably valuable.
Hmm.
And so aliens began to start to come to Earth. Now, there was a committee and I'm probably gonna mess some of this up, but I've got a little bit of information in front of me. The committee was the Majestic 12 committee,
Yeah,
and
MK12.
okay. And apparently, this committee wasn't just 12 people, it was something like 32 people, but the top 12 were the ones were in charge. So if you hear something about J12 or MJ12,
MK12 or Magic.
hold on, you're
Okay, I'm
getting ahead of me. You know,
sorry.
MJ12 is not the Majestic 12 project.
Right. Okay.
Okay, now this.
That was just the initial committee set up
No.
by Eisenhower.
Majestic 12 or Madge 12 was the project.
Okay.
MJL was the leader. Anything designated MJL was to the leader of the project. MJ2 through 12 were proponents. They were the leaders. Now, if you start doing searches for some of this, you come up with massive amounts of companies, huge fronts, large corporations with ties and other entities and multinational organizations. So it does kind of make you think that, you know, if this organization were there and they had to embed themselves and find funding, that they'd create multinational corporations that would
Well,
constantly have funding.
I mean, to reinforce what you said, when the CIA wanted to put up the first spy satellite, it was deep pockets. It was private money that facilitated that. And
Now,
also, the CIA has the ability of taking money from any part of the government without oversight.
we haven't even gotten into the CIA yet. We might have to do the like departments of
Well,
national
understand
security
that the
as
CIA
individual services.
actually the CIA didn't even exist until after World War II.
Right. After the
Right.
1940s. After the NSA signed in a national security bill that allowed for the creation of the Majestic 12 project, which ran until the 60s, when the project was found that because of the high investigation rate and low counter yield rate, basically they investigated thousands and thousands of sightings and instances of UFO or alien engagement, and only 701 of them were remained unidentified. Everything else had been explained. So the government couldn't deem spending the millions of dollars it was on funding a project that they didn't get any outcome from.
Fox, the NSA, they're the guys that record all the internet, every email, every phone call, every communication between everybody worldwide.
Now, it seems funny that something you hear along conspiracy theorists is this is such a top secret project that when people try to speak out and let the world know what's going on, they disappear and mysteriously die. So don't
Yeah.
talk about this project or you'll be dead. Coming from a guy on a TV show talking about this project who's still alive.
Well, there's the conundrum too, because I mean, there are people that disappear. There are people that commit suicide, even though they tell everybody they're never going to commit suicide. But then there's some people that they do let out, but then they can whitewash it by calling it all conspiracy theory or throwing up a whole bunch of other information that misdirects people. They do that. It's counterintelligence.
Okay. Some of this I have the ability to believe. This goes back to the conversation about is there alien life on Earth or have we met with alien life? And you know, I'm seeing evidence start to appear, but the worst part about the evidence I'm seeing is it's not current evidence.
No, but then again, think about it. Again, they never thought that the internet would be what it is. So you being able to research all this is really out of the blue. They never had that planned, and that's kind of why they're trying to get a reign on the internet now. At the same time, there's stuff out there. There are whistleblowers. There are files filed. Stuff that was put away a long, long time ago that, like you said, you could run across on a deep, deep, deep search. It may not be the smoking gun, but it's enough to sort of give you an idea that there's something going on. I mean, there was a story about an alien that was in I think it was in the Eisenhower administration. This guy was able to talk in 100 languages. He was all over Washington, D.C. He wore a suit. He looked human. He sat in on Congress. He talked to people in Washington, bigwigs, and then eventually he left. But there's that story too, and that's kind of a known story.
Known story. Uh-oh. Am I echoing through you?
No.
A little bit. I'm coming back through your speaker.
Am I?
I was just actually skimming back through something I was reading earlier, and it's funny you should bring up Eisenhower, because consistently something I find in here is the government appeal to this is that they've checked the books, they've looked at the libraries, they've checked his appointments and all the logs, and the meetings that supposedly happened never happened. The appointments, the people...
Wouldn't you expect that?
Kind of.
I mean, there are people that their job is to scrub it.
Apparently in 1997, I think 96 or 97, there was a investigation done on the Blue Planet Project report that was released from 1984. The investigation was done by the FBI into the meetings and the other things that were released into the book that could be found based on records and memorandums and, travel and whatnot. And they said there is no way, there is not enough information that is solid enough to go off of, that it's completely a bogus report.
Well, okay, do you know who the vice president of? I mean, do you know who the vice president was in the Eisenhower administration?
No, that's not right. Robert Cutler?
No, Richard Nixon.
Was it Nixon?
And the funny thing is that Tricky Dick, he was in the know with all this stuff. He was one of the presidents who actually was in the know. And later, when he became president, there's a story that he lived on Key Biscayne, which is just outside of Miami, Florida. And back then, the biggest star in Miami was Jackie Gleason. And Jackie Gleason and Nixon were fast friends. And they were golfing buddies. And one day, Nixon shook his security detail and drove up and picked up Jackie Gleason, and they drove to Homestead Air Force Base because Jackie Gleason also was an avid UFO nut. And he took Jackie Gleason to the Air Force Base. They went in through the guard gate, and they went into some underground facility, and Nixon showed Gleason alien bodies.
And again, this always goes back to, in my mind, I'm sitting here.
And this story was repeated by Gleason to a lot of his friends, and then a lot of these friends have come out later, much later, and told the same story. And that's the thing. when you hear one story from one person, okay, you could have plenty doubt. But when you hear the same story from 3 people, 4 people, when you hear the same story from unrelated people, it becomes more true.
Now, there's some weird parts of this story that we haven't gotten to that make it slightly less believable. One of them being, along the context somewhere in this story, it states that perhaps, or it's probable, that the abductions and the mutilations happen because they keep a vat of live tissue and blood that certain aliens rejuvenate in.
Right. Yeah, I heard also that some aliens used certain serums that come from like our what's our the endocrine system, all our, what are they called, the one in our neck and the one in our
Oh, the glands.
the glands, right. In other words, the secretions from our glands are like alien food.
Okay, I can see, fair enough. Let me explain. I can see aliens consuming humans, if that makes sense. It's
There's
it's
a lot of missing.
species
There's
on
a lot
different
of
level.
there's a lot of missing people every
Not just-
year.
I can see them consuming human flesh to be eating us as a food product like we do cattle. I can almost see that. However, don't get me wrong, I understand government and people with money do crazy, stupid shit like cutting the blood of a virgin and drinking it around a circle of 76 people because they have the most money on the planet. Okay, craziness. I could kind of see letting a few people disappear, but letting aliens run amok without just going,
Dude,
hey, by the way, you guys have gone too far.
A million children every year disappear in the United States alone.
Maybe they were crossbred with aliens.
Without a trace. A million.
Okay, a lot of weird things happen. This is where I always go, and this is really hard to explain. How do I state I want to believe, but then crazy gets thrown in there and makes it really hard to believe?
Well, not only do we have cattle mutilations, but what's lesser known is that there have been human mutilations in the same exact way as the cattle mutilations are.
So I won't be here just saying hi. Well, all right. Thanks for stopping, Ryder. Appreciate it. Where do I go? My mind is formulating. How do we offer realism to this? And I haven't been able to sit down and read through the 1984 Blue Planet Project. It looks a little cloudy from the PDFs that I've been able to find, but I'm assuming there might be better ones.
To be honest, I don't think you ever will. You'll never find something that's undeniable. You won't. There are people dedicated their lives to specifically deleting that. You're never going to find it.
All right, so this is where I try to perspective. There's 350 million people in the United States, roughly.
390.
307. Oh, really? Where you get 390 from?
Or 380 and change, 387.
I was thinking we were going to be in like 370s, maybe.
Last time I looked, it was like 380 something.
Okay.
But anyways, I mean,
there's a lot of people here.
Yes,
a
lot
you
of
telling me? And okay, again, I'm trying to like zone into a perspective on this. How many people? How many humans would need to be involved in a project, and how many of them would it take to make sure that project stays under wraps? Because the more people you involve to protect, cover, construct, deconstruct, move, fly, test, the more people you involve, the higher the probability of mistakes being made. And then,
yeah, but everything's compartmentalized. Nobody knows the whole story. A guy in an office gets a task to do one thing. He puts this into that. He doesn't even know. He knows what this into that will do, but he doesn't know what this and that is for. It's like trying to, they built the atomic bomb in the same way, and nobody basically told anybody that it was happening, and there were thousands of people involved. And when they were testing, when they were testing the bomb, people in Las Vegas were going, "Oh, the sky is glowing." They had no idea.
Huh. Oh man, it makes me think, and I tried to kind of mumble it over there. This secret recipe has been in the family for years. No one knows it. It's locked in the safe.
Everybody,
this guy adds the sugar, and this guy adds the nuts, and this guy adds this, and I don't tell anybody any more than what they need to know to do their specific
They have no
part of the
idea.
job.
They have no idea. They're in an office. They see a jar. They know their job is to put 2 spoonsful of sugar in that jar and then shove the jar into the next office. The next office puts another spoonful of spice, and the next office puts 3 drops of this, and the next office puts a cup of that. And when finally it all comes out, it comes out as chili. Nobody knew they were making chili.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? It's really weird, but then try to apply that to something the size of even a military structured organization. Somebody, even during the nuclear testing in sites, somebody, a few people, the ones in charge, knew what was going on. And eventually, somebody comes wise to the morality of the issues that they're currently in, no matter what training or anything.
And we know all about that now. 50, 70, 100 years later, we know about it. We know that the guy who invented the bomb said, he was worried that the sky could catch on fire. And he quoted now what was that line? I think it was a line from the Bible, but yeah. But back then nobody knew. Back then the normies had no clue.
I still think it's weird, and
it's odd. But the thing is that if you look at it, okay, you just did a little research on this thing called the Blue Planet, right?
Right.
And then there are other people that have no idea what the Blue Planet is, and they do research on MJ12. And then there are other people that do research on cattle mutilations, and they find out that there's a few human mutilations. Then there's this detective that he wrote a book on the strangest disappearances in all of the national parks in the United States, where you have people literally disappearing not directly in front of somebody's eyes, but literally right around the corner, and then reappearing 30 miles away or up a mountainside, or found dead with their clothing neatly folded in a pile next to them. I mean, there was a 4-year-old. There was a 4-year-old kid who was within earshot of his parents, and he was like right on the other side of this boulder, and he disappeared. And they searched and searched and searched, and they couldn't find him. And 2 days later, he was found halfway up a mountainside that a mountain climber couldn't get to, would have to get to. How did he get there? So you have all these things and all these stories, and if you accumulate everything, even the book on Smirch and this and that and the other, and you have the guy who worked in Area 51 who they erased his life. All he has is a phone book from the place he worked at and one W-2 form showing he got paid by an agency. But if you look at his records, he doesn't have any schooling, he doesn't have any job, he doesn't have anything. They erased him. But he came forward. You know, you have all these things. So if you look at everything and you accumulate everything, there has to be a shred of truth in all of this. If it's all pointing to aliens, if it's all pointing to government cover-ups and agencies, secret agencies and black ops, and there's got to be some truth to this.
All right, so there's 167 or 162 species of aliens. Even the same report I read in one instance says 162, then says 160 or more, and then says 150 or more. So
well, remember, you're looking at it from a point in time. This has been going on for decades. So at one point, maybe
they're saying total.
No, but I'm saying at one point, maybe all they knew of was 157, and then later a few more were added, and then later a few more were added. And you coming at it from 50 years later, you've got 3 sheets of paper saying 3 different numbers.
35 years later ish.
Because what you're reading is across, many decades of time.
Yeah, I suppose whatever information released in 84 and gone over from 84 until now and looked at over and over again, whatever information I can find is going to be old information. We go back to, and I want to bring this up again because this is something my numbskull mind has been dwelling on since I said it yesterday. My little bullshit stream, but it wasn't titled a bullshit stream. So, did you catch the part where I was talking about traveling at the speed of light?
Yeah.
Okay. So, let me think real about this. Let me offer non-scientific approach that was handed to me in school, things I learned through gathering information. Let me just re-offer the approach I gave yesterday, and that is, if you're traveling and your speed increases, that doesn't change the way the time is. It changes the way you possibly perceive time. So as you travel at the speed of light, 1 light year will take you 1 year to travel. While you've traveled that light year away from Earth, 1 year has passed, because a light year is a measurement of distance in which the light travels in 1 year. It is not. It is a speed by measurement of the travel of another. It is a speed measurement by comparison. So a light year is how long it takes your light to travel in a year. How far you can get in 1 year. So
right.
Where does that? Because you remember, because I've talked about this before. There's a time dilation where as you travel faster to the speed of light, time slows for you. But why? How? Well, I'm sorry, science aside, let me look at this from a dumb man's point of view.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying, though?
Science aside, we have satellites that track, what are the GPS, right?
Okay.
All these satellites have clocks. All the clocks have to be synchronized not only with each other, but with ground base.
Right.
Did you know that these satellites that are
hours?
in space traveling around the Earth their clocks change from the ones that are on the ground.
Yes,
because
there's a computer program that manipulates that.
Huh?
Or not manipulates, that adapts for the change of their clock because their clock is measuring time differently.
It resets the clock, but the clock changes because of the speed it's traveling. In other words, it's moving just an infinitesimal amount slower because it's moving at a very fast rate of speed.
Okay.
And it's nowhere near the speed of light.
Okay. And I will look into this more to reaffirm. But my mind will always go back to even known knowledge and look at why. Okay?
So, well, I'm not saying why. I'm just showing you a demonstration, a physical demonstration of the theory. The same thing about gravity. Did you know that you can take a weighted measure and weigh it on the ground and then go up into a very tall building, 100 stories, and weigh that same weighted measure, and it will be slightly lighter because the gravity is slightly less. Gravity increases the closer you get to the center of the earth.
Right. Well, also, with science, think about it. Gravity doesn't necessarily increase the closer you get to the center of the Earth. It's that the compounds closer to the center of the Earth would be denser, which would create a higher gravity. If we went closer to the center of the Earth and the Earth that we went through, if the Earth that we went through weren't above us, it would change.
Yeah, but the density. Gravity. Okay, if gravity is the way Einstein wanted to theorize it, or to explain it, if you look at gravity is like a sheet, and if you put Earth on the sheet, it depresses the sheet under it. the density in the center of the planet, it wouldn't be dense if there was no gravity. It's being pressed on from all sides, becoming more dense.
Right.
So, in other words, a pound of iron at the center of the earth, pulled out and put on the surface of the earth, would be less than a pound. And if you took that pound of iron that was on that less than pound of iron that was on the surface of the earth, and you put it in the top of a 110-story building, it'd be even a little bit less than it was on the surface. And the further away from the planet you get, the lighter that pound would be.
Okay, we're going to get into complex gravitational theory here soon. Back to the aliens.
Right.
The spaceships. The new video. Didn't we take a look at parts of that video or talk about the video, the one that was released a month ago?
Did you see the one I sent you, the one in Australia? The daylight one?
Yes.
That was pretty cool, right?
Yes, and I will admit I've seen freaky shit happen in the air myself, which I cannot explain.
that was very not photoshopped.
Oh, absolutely. And what I'm talking about is time before my camera or my phone even had a camera, so there was no picture or anything. But a buddy and I were out driving near an airport where I live, and I'm not even shitting you, we were beside the plane. It was a small plane from a small regional airport, and the plane was not moving forward.
Oh, that's weird. I've seen that. I've heard that before.
No, we stopped the car and tried to find something to stare at the plane through. The plane was sitting in one spot for like 20 minutes.
But are you saying it was a plane, or are you saying it was lights that looked like a plane?
I am saying it looked like a plane. It looked like it was maybe a mile away from our
But it was
location.
dark or light? You
It
actually
was
saw the
daylight.
aircraft?
I saw the aircraft. I could
Okay.
not quite read or see the lettering, but you could tell and make out that it was absolutely an aircraft, a plane, something that
Yeah,
I'd
no,
ridden on. It
I
looked
hear you.
almost identical to the one I'd flown out on from that airport.
Right.
Okay? But we were driving down a side road that was almost parallel to the takeoff strip and landing
Yeah.
strip. And as we're going, it looked like the plane wasn't moving at all. So I pulled the car over.
Were you going the same direction as the plane or the
Yes,
opposite direction?
we were going the same
Okay.
direction as the plane. I noticed it out my driver's side window, just over the tree line. It looked like it was just hovering. And I said, look, that plane doesn't look like it's moving. It should be like going past us because I'm doing 55. And
But
planes...
you said this was a small private plane, right?
Right, and when they take off, they start off at about 40 to 50 miles an hour. Then they increase usually to about 65 or 70 miles an hour at the level that it was at. Because I've been on one.
Right. And if you're moving at 45, then all you see is a difference of 30.
Right.
And that difference of 30 from a mile away looks even slower.
Oh, I understand that. Now, I have sat and watched planes fly over me. This is something I used to regularly do. So to see one that looks like it's not moving at all, we stopped to take a look. You know, hey, by the way, me and my buddy are stoners. We were driving down a back road getting high. So, full disclosure. Dude, that plane's not moving. Yeah, it is. There's no way that plane's just sitting there. No, dude, I'm telling you that plane is floating. Hold on, I'll pull over. I'll show you. Dude, look, I'm telling you, the plane's not moving. Oh,
There
dude,
are
you're right.
there are videos on YouTube that I think they title them under glitches in the Matrix.
Okay, so
Where they show actually big jumbo jets that all of a sudden stop moving in the sky and then start again.
okay, so saying that, I will understand that weird, seemingly, nah, that didn't happen. I didn't really just see that kind of things have happened, even to me. I've watched planes, I've watched jets fly, I've watched small prop planes fly, I've watched crop dusters fly.
I
I've sat and watched them. If I can determine the distance and sit and watch them, you determine the amount of time. If you don't see them move over a certain amount of space over that time, you can kind of gauge how far off they are. But to not move for a good 15 minutes, and I'm stoned, so I've no problem sitting there for 15 minutes staring at a plane that
Right.
looks like it's not even literally hovering, but just sitting there in the air.
now there could be, there could have been a headwind. I'm just being devil's advocate here.
Fair
If you've
enough.
got a plane,
You're
if
right.
you got
I
a
didn't
plane
think about
going
that.
80 forward and it's a mile away and you're standing still and it looks like it's standing still, if it has a headwind of 100 miles per hour, hell, it could almost be looking like it's going backwards.
Okay. Okay, I can take that as explainability. So the weirdest thing I think I've ever had happen in my life is semi-explained now. So now we can narrow it down to the other 701 unexplained items that happened between 1947 and 1984.
The whale says you're seeing things.
I love seeing things. Those
You
are
know,
the good
I had a UFO encounter.
I'm listening.
It was about, I would say it was twilight. I was at a house I owned and I saw this light in the distance. Now this light was, I'm in Miami, understand. So if I look west, this light looked like it was 20 miles away, which would have put it right over the Everglades where there is nothing. And what was weird about this light was, well, first off, the white part of the light looked like it was so bright, it was like the headlights to a jumbo jet. But the weird thing was this: the white light turned colors. It literally shifted. So it went from white to red to blue to green to yellow, back to white, and it did that over and over and over. And all these colors were very, very vivid and very, very bright. And this thing sat in the sky. It didn't move, and it sat there for 10, 15 minutes. I went inside. I grabbed my 35 millimeter SLR film type camera. I put on a zoom lens. I went up to my balcony on the second floor. I rested the camera up against the house because with the zoom lens and being as dark as it was, I knew that the exposure was going to be very, very long. So I couldn't actually hold the camera. It would end up being a whole bunch of squiggles.
Yeah.
So I snapped a few shots. And when I had those shots developed, what I ended up getting was squiggles, of course, because even if I was resting it up against the house, I was still holding it and I was still hitting the shutter.
You probably should have gone for a wide aperture and a medium f-stop. You might have gotten a few less squiggles.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, though. I kept it good enough where you could actually see clouds. You could actually see a few stars. But when it came to this object, in the squiggle itself, which is actually kind of cool, you can see the color shift. So in other words, imagine a little piece of spaghetti and that spaghetti being multicolor. So in other words, it was white and then it was green and then it was blue and then it was red and then it was, all the way through the rainbow and then back to white.
All right, so if you hadn't had the jitter that caused the squiggles, you would have basically had one section of overexposed film from the light.
Yeah, it would have been a dot, which is 99% of all the UFO pictures you see is a dot.
So let me bring you to the next question. Because as for the blue planet topic, it is basically there is existence, there's minor proof, there's a little hearsay, and a bunch of claims that are said to be bogus. But let's go to alien encounter type thing. And let's try to approach this logically. If you and I are piloting our human alien to another species craft into the atmosphere to take a look, one, unless we want to be seen or known about or are tempting the fate of being found, you don't do it during the day, you do it during the night, and you make sure your lights are off. Because you can probably be able to see the ground through all of your equipment in the ship.
But to be honest, do you care?
That's the question,
if we're walking over an anthill, do we want to camouflage ourselves because we're worried about what the ants will think?
But are they walking over an anthill, or are they a gorilla walking up to a lion and they don't know which one's more powerful? They're just looking at each other going, what do I do?
Nah, I don't think they think of us as gorillas or lions. They've demonstrated on many, many occasions that all the equipment we have, they can run circles around.
Except for nuclear bombs?
And yes, they've crashed, but which kind of actually makes me feel a little better. It makes me feel like they're not perfect.
Right. But, well, hold on. If our nuclear testing and nuclear weapons is what called them here, then that attracted them. That might be something they don't have, which I kind of find hard to believe that.
No, I don't think it was that.
Wouldn't be accessible by an
I
alien species.
I don't think it's that at all. I think it's this. I think every planet with life on it is like a tiny little island in space. And this planet, we may think of it as ours, but ultimately it isn't. This planet is the universe's. This planet is here as a tiny little speck in the ocean that can support life. And if we, as a species, start screwing this planet up to the point where it'll end up being a dust bowl or a radioactive shell of its former self, that's why they're showing up. That's why they're interested. They're interested. They're keeping a very close eye on us. They've demonstrated to us on multiple occasions that they're superior.
So
they've also demonstrated to us that they're not. Well, I don't know about all of them because you can't put them all into a group. But the ones that have demonstrated that they're not malevolent. In other words, they're not out to take our planet. Maybe it's their planet. Maybe we're just like cattle. They just don't want the cattle to destroy the field.
Fair. You never know. Again, it goes down to perspective, and we only have that of which we have achieved, and we are just a bacteria living on the side of the planet.
Think about this too. We're finding out more and more that maybe our history isn't what we thought it was. In other words, we look at the Bible and we look at other cultures, and we can pretty much read that it's about 6, 7, 8,000, 9,000 years old, at least our written history. But we're finding places that are 10,000 years old. Not only are they 10,000 years old, but they're made in a way which isn't stone guys, stone tools. It's much more sophisticated. So maybe humans as a species were advanced as we are today at one point 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 years ago. And we left.
Once in a while, I try to think about this. Now, we all know that stupid Will Smith movie, The I Am Legend, and 1 year after, and they show the streets growing with grass and the concrete crumbling. As someone who does, yard and landscape work for fun and for work, you will get overgrown fast. Grass will go through a building. It'll rip a building apart. It'll turn stones and brick into powder and rubble.
You remember that movie, The Time Machine, the original classic, the one with the fancy seat with the spinning wheel?
Yes.
Remember when he went 10,000, 20,000 years into the future, and the Eloy, those teenage blonde people took him to the library, and he started spinning those discs, and they were talking to him, and there was a shelf of books, the knowledge of humankind on a shelf, and he went to grab a book and it crumbled, and then he grabbed another and it crumbled, and he got all pissed off because here's the knowledge of humankind, and he just smashed it and it all went into dust.
Yep. I did see that movie a long time ago.
We have stuff now on computers. Hard disks don't last forever. We have stuff on CDs. CDs don't last forever. They're working on stuff to write to crystal. Maybe that'll last forever, but I doubt it. Crystal can break, shatter, scratch.
Plus, nothing that we know on this earth will last.
Except for stone. Imagine that. Except for
stone. Nothing we have on this earth will last through the earth being destroyed.
Except for stone, depending on where it is. And that's the thing, and that's the secret that kind of tells us that there was some advancement way before us, because we can't even move those stones today.
Yeah. Even with equipment.
Yeah, with multiple equipment.
We have equipment that'll cut mountains away. We
We
have
have
equipment that'll cut holes that are
dude,
12 and 16 feet across.
in Chicago, the Bell the Ma Bell building that housed all the operators back in the day, like in the 40s and 50s. This building was the size of a city block. They had to move it across the street. They literally moved the entire building across the street while it was all still hooked up and the operators were still connecting calls. And yet we can't move some of the stones we've found quarried and laying on it on their side. We've found ruins that were built on top of other stones, and those
Reaper.
other stones.
Hold on. Reaper, use the @ symbol.
Pardon?
Reaper's trying to give TCA money. Reaper, use the @ symbol and let the computer pull up TCA.
TC space A.
Yeah, but if you use the @ symbol, it'll bring it up automatically and it'll work.
Yeah, I tried that though, and it didn't work for me.
Yeah, I had that problem too.
I had to spell it out. It didn't like the @
You got to do the @ and when you select the name, you press enter, but don't press space, and then you press the amount. There it goes. Yeah, it's a pain in the butt sometimes, but I like to make sure I leave it there for you guys to have fun, even though it takes a little bit to keep it running. All right. I just want to go.
So yeah,
unbelievable things.
How do we know there isn't? How do we know Atlantis isn't Antarctica? How do we know that there isn't a advanced city underneath the ice in Antarctica?
Antarctica. Haven't we watched our planet, we know, moves. The continents move.
Right.
So if there was a lost city, and let's say they specifically lost themselves, wouldn't they be either somewhere around or near a moving continent that they could hide beneath?
Well, understand too that our planet also, the ocean levels have risen and fallen many hundreds of feet. So they've actually found cities off the coast of India. Mm-hmm. These were mythic mythic cities that were written up in books, and they literally found them under the ocean off the coast of India. Yeah. So there are cities to be found, lost ones. They've found
surprisingly in awesome condition, made of stone and marble and encrusted with, precious stones and jewels and silver and gold. You're talking beautiful palaces that are tens of thousands of years old that are intact. More intact than the World Trade Center.
They found a old house in the mud underneath Rome, and as they were digging it out, they literally found scrolls that were attributed to that ancient library that was destroyed, one of the wonders of the world. I forget the name. But yeah,
with the names, I know what you're talking about. The library, the Great Library.
Right.
I just don't know the name of it off the top of my head either. We also have to think about time and what it does. We also have Pompeii. Didn't they recently find a guy running from Pompeii who'd been hit in the back with a multi-thousand-ton boulder that was expelled from the volcano as he was running?
What, just recently?
It was a few months or something ago. There was a
Oh,
report.
I don't know. I mean,
apparently they found a guy, whatever it's called, petrified or volcanified from the ashes and everything.
oh no, they've got a lot of them there.
Well,
In other
hold
words,
on. They found one just
Oh.
at the edge of Pompeii. It looked like he was running when he was hit with a large boulder from the volcano, and it crushed him from behind.
Okay.
And he was preserved like that.
Yeah.
Now, think about that through time. Maybe we just don't see it because it's buried. Maybe Stonehenge is just the surface of something that's really there. Maybe time and age. Think if you go through European countries, there's still excavating areas that were built on top of areas that were built on top of areas. So thousands and thousands of years ago, a stone castle was built. The castle was partially knocked down, but the earth sedimented over it. And then a new castle was built there because that was a great spot. And then it was knocked down and sedimented over. And then another one built on top of it. I forget where this place is in the world right now, but it's an actual spot. There's 3 monumental historic locations built on top of each other.
What about those new pyramids they found in, was it Estonia or it was in Eastern Europe? And they looked like mountains covered in forest, but there's edges to them. And it's a big debate. The people, there are scientists there that literally see ancient concrete, and they have found passages inside it. So they're pretty convinced that this is a pyramid. The pyramid is monstrously huge. It's even bigger than the ones in Saudi Arabia or in Egypt. Yet nobody knew about them until just recently.
Yeah, and plants and weather, nature will tear buildings apart. For instance, with this new house I bought, now that I'm letting things grow in and turn green, I'm realizing that my entire property is surrounded by a vine that grows in the Northeast called Virginia creeper.
Oh, it's not kudzu?
No. I have some poison ivy up on the hills. And Virginia creeper apparently up and down or all the way around my property. And it is like poison ivy, just not as bad. Some people aren't allergic to it, but most people do have some sort of, itch or rash allergy to it. And it is all around my property. And the best way to kill it kills everything else.
There's a little vine that you guys buy in the stores as house plants. They have a heart-shaped leaf that are green with yellow streaks. I forget the name of it. But that vine down here, it's a tiny little vine. That vine down here will find a tree, latch onto it, and as it goes up the tree, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I swear to you, those leaves get to the size of like elephant ears. And that tiny little vine that's thinner than a pencil becomes thicker than your wrist.
Oh, yeah. And it's almost the same thing with this Virginia creeper. It's an ivy. And anybody who knows anything about ivies knows ivies will grow into any building. And they will rip stone apart. They will kill a tree. They will tear a building down. They will tear your roof off. If they get into the cracks of your wood, they will rip your house apart. An ivy is lethal to a house.
Hey,
so imagine that growing on top of anything. It's lost.
No. Do you want to show these guys that picture of the UFO daytime shot? The one in Australia, the daytime shot?
Can I is the question.
Would you be able to share that?
Let me pop over into my video card.
We got about 4 people watching. They might be interested to see a daytime shot of a UFO that isn't a speck.
All right. Well, I'm waiting for my. Come on, load. While I'm waiting for my shit to load. This is interesting,
Okay.
and that light echo is back. This is interesting. The Blue Planet Project kind of coincides with us talking about the existence of aliens. It kind of offers a little solidification, but in the way of saying, well, here's a bed of what could be quicksand. Just walk through and tell me how it goes. I don't know how much I can trust. I don't know if I want to. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing too. That's the thing too, because if you did believe it, yeah, you open yourself up to a shift in reality.
I want, and this is what a lot of people want. I want a little proof. I want to see that alien carcass.
But see,
real.
that's the thing. You know, when it comes to proof, and I've said this before, if we ever do get a picture, a video that is, you know, of a guy walking right up to a flying saucer, and it looks perfectly clear and perfectly vivid, how much you want to bet that the people that don't want to believe will say it's Photoshop? The people that do want to believe will say
Photoshop.
There's the proof. So ultimately, what do you have?
Very true. How do you believe things if what you think to believe is possibly fake?
I got pissed off at Akkad Sargon.
Okay.
He remember when that video came out recently, the one from the Department of Defense, and then later they said, oh, it wasn't released by the Department of Defense, it was released by a guy in retirement, and blah blah blah, and you know, whatever. The whole point was that, I mean, the whole importance of it wasn't the fact that it was proof. It was the fact that the mainstream media didn't laugh at it for the first time, where you had a pilot literally, you know, talking about it in front of the video playing, you know, telling the story, and the media wasn't like smirking and giggling and going, ooh, did you meet a Martian? You know, that was the whole point. And you know, Akkad was did a video on this, and he was like, well, you know, back in the early days, I was a real believer and I was really into this stuff and whatnot. But since then, I've sort of kind of gotten reality back, and you know, it would take a lot more than this to prove to me that aliens or UFOs or whatever exist. And you know, I mean, you could probably see my comment in his section still. I railed at him, and I said, listen, you know.
Whoa. I thought it would be.
Yeah, you don't need the sound.
I'm fixing it now. Bear with me.
But yeah, I railed at him, and then finally I pasted his country's blue book files, which they all released, you know, and I'm like, you know, even if all this, even if everything but 1% was explained, what about the 1%?
Here we are. It's playing.
I mean, that's an amazing piece of video. That is an amazing piece of video.
Hey, what was the ship from Star Wars called?
Oh, the Millennium Falcon.
Millennium Falcon. So apparently the Millennium Falcon was missing an escape pod. That was why I had that little niche missing out of it.
Oh, is
Is
that
this
what
the
it was?
Millennium Falcon?
Hey, don't you start.
Is this
But
the
I
Millennium
mean,
Falcon flying over our
I mean
atmosphere?
that is definitely not CGI. That
You know
is
what?
definitely not Photoshop.
Superman threw a frisbee.
I mean, look at it when it goes across the wire. I mean, you can tell that's taken by a phone. You can tell. Now, I'm not saying that that's an alien craft, but that's not an airplane. That's not a weather balloon. That's not Venus.
Holy
Could it
shit.
be a black budget project? Sure.
Absolutely. It's the bat plane.
Now there are a couple. You know, you were talking about bases. There are a couple bases in Australia too.
Well, there would have to be. There'd have to be bases worldwide. And it started to. Okay, so admittedly, some of what I was looking at started to get into, you know.
Now here, wait a second. Do you have magnifier on your Windows also? Because you could magnify the magnification.
You don't want to know what I can do on my side. I can pop this over. Let me do this. You guys can't see this. Let me move this over here. Put that on the big screen.
It's a frisbee. There you go. It's a frisbee. It's a drone. See?
Okay.
If it isn't Photoshop, it's got to be a frisbee or a drone.
Okay, so here's one thing I'm noticing, and I've got this thing. You guys see it on the screen like that? Hold on, now I gotta go smaller. Okay, so I'm watching this on a 65-inch screen, so that ship is about 4 inches wide on my TV right now. Maybe 3 inches. There are obviously areas of that ship that are sticking out. That
Yeah, it has like a pointy nose.
no, it's like a rounded, but there you can see a point, but it's rounded.
Right. It's not a sharp point. But it's definitely got a wedge type shape to it.
There also looks to be something on the front, like a leg or an antenna or something off the bottom. It was thin. Oh, hold on, Data. I will mute that so you guys don't all hear my phone ringing. Where did my audio go? Data, go for it.
Yeah.
It's all yours for a minute.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, there are other pictures. There are other videos. The most intriguing ones that I've seen are also pictures of YouTubers with very large telescopes, basically spending nights staring at the moon, and the stuff they've picked up from the moon were pretty amazing. I mean, of course, little dots again, nothing like that. But when you have a little dot coming out of a crater and then flying over the edge and then flying across the surface, or you have a what looked to me like an actual craft in orbit of the moon with engines firing. They were pretty.
Again, hold on. Sorry, I was listening. I just I got called for a job. I got hopefully tomorrow. We'll see. Again, wouldn't an advanced technology probably run on something other than combustible fuel?
Well, it doesn't. I saw lights. It doesn't have to be combustible fuel. It could have been.
And I think I've seen the video you're talking about. I think you showed it to me, or I saw it. It was on your list or something. It comes back to believability versus
well, you know,
hysteria.
the TR-3B, the one that supposedly our government has, the anti-gravity craft, it supposedly has three lights. It's a triangular craft, and it has three lights in the corners, but those aren't actually lights. Those are plasma from the electrical charge that it actually uses to float and fly. So it isn't necessarily, when you see a light, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's flame.
I suppose that's true.
The
We're
whole
wrap
premise
this up here shortly, guys. I know everybody's looking to go catch the next show. We've been going for over an hour. The problem is that everything is believable to the point where it's hard to believe. And it's such a thin line, and there's so little actual, intelligible, verifiable information to the public to determine what we want to determine. So we're all going off of these reports and these studies and these projects and these case findings and witnesses. But again,
and people coming forward and stories, and someone tells this story, Jackie Gleason here, the Department of Defense of Canada there. But as an aggregate, in other words, you got it's such a huge volume. I mean, isn't there any movement on
where is my state of New Mexico museum for the history of alien research?
Huh?
I want to see my museum where I can walk through and look at, the bones from an alien species and go, okay, so we met these people in 1967. How come we weren't told? It's a good thing it's 2018 now.
We haven't even been told that John F. Kennedy was killed by somebody else.
Yeah, we were just told a few months ago John F. Kennedy was killed by someone in the sewer. That's done and over. History is history. Tell me about the fucking aliens.
Well, the guy who started NASA, that Nazi, he said that, when we'll find out about aliens? When our government fools the world into thinking we're being invaded by aliens.
Oh, by the way, the people that have been here for 50 years aren't agreeing with us anymore. We're being invaded. There's aliens all over. This is how to find them. By the way, we're the only country with guns. Kill them.
See, Daryl thinks we're all crazy.
Thank you, Daryl.
And when the aliens land right at Daryl's foot, he's going to go...
like those old cartoons. And literally, in some cases, apparently, by studies and presentations and notes I've been looking at, literally land at your feet, because apparently most of the alien species we've come in contact with are smaller than we are. A lot of which 50% or smaller of our size. Except for one, which, again...
The Norwegians?
It's not the Norwegians. It was what the whites, they call them. Or
the ones with the white hair and they look like humans.
They're Norwegians. But there is a name for them. The Nordics.
Right.
The Nordics. Okay? So the Nordics... tall, muscular, Swedish people. That's all they are. They're like a few inches to a foot taller than us at most. The Greys are like 2/3 our size.
Daryl, first of all, UFOs are unidentified flying objects. So if you see Venus and you're not sure it's Venus, you actually saw a UFO.
Okay, here's another one. Do you know
UFOs
the government
don't
necessarily call them UFOs
mean
anymore?
Aliens.
Do you know they're not even called UFOs anymore?
Well, What do you mean?
I mean, there's a new 3-letter acronym. It's like an AAUF or something. UAF. It's got a 3-letter acronym. It's not a UFO anymore. It's now
Well,
a something AO
an alien reproduction vehicle,
IAO or something like that.
an ARV.
Something like that. Aerial vehicle or something stupid like that. There's a new acronym that the governments use to define what these encounters are. It's not a UFO anymore. It's something like something aerial vehicle or something aerial anomaly or something like that.
I mean, Daryl, did you see that video just now? You think that's a drone, or you think that's a new spy plane?
Could have been a really big drone. I mean, I've seen model planes that size, but they have propellers. How about a model helicopter built? I've
You
seen
think that's
computers
actually
built.
a frisbee or a hubcap?
Hey, I was getting creative and I had this little motor that spins, and I thought I'd make a frisbee into a drone. And it has a wing on the front to guide the direction. I don't
I
know.
mean, you know, there have been. I'm not saying there haven't been hoaxes. There have been plenty hoaxes too.
Better yet, the whole UFO theory and anomaly thing causes people not necessarily to want to make hoaxes, but to create things like, I don't know, Alienware technology, or flying saucer cup holders, or flying saucer drones, these custom things that feed into the UFOs that, oh, look, well, if it flies 40 feet above your head, somebody with their Wi-Fi controller just flew a drone far enough over you couldn't tell it was a drone
Right.
because it was built to look like a UFO for fun.
Yeah,
So that just
there've
makes it
been
more unbelievable and
there have
yet
been
kind of
helium
believable.
balloons. There have been helium balloons that are silver disc-shaped UFO-shaped objects.
Yeah. In conclusion, it's up to you to believe or not to believe. We
Right.
just bring you the information to look at. And the Blue Planet Project does not seem to me to be a large definable instance, but if it looks more like a spiderweb instance of alien encounters, and I'll look into a little bit more, see if there's anything that brings out another
Remember,
project.
remember the book that the aliens gave us to serve man was a cookbook.
To serve man.
That was
Ah,
that was a what do you call it? Not a Twilight
pun.
Zone. That was a the other one. Not the
Uh,
not the Twilight Zone, but the other show.
Damn it! Why can't I think tonight? Is it because it's
I don't know.
Saturday? Is it because I'm not drinking? I know what you're
What?
talking about too.
Yeah, it wasn't. Come on, chat. What was the TV show in the 50s? Not the Twilight Zone. The Dark. Was it the Dark something? Dark.
No, but they did those weird tales of things that
Right.
you were to
That was
decide if
that
they
was
were
the
real
one
or not.
where the aliens landed and they had this
The
book,
Outer Limits.
The Outer Limits, exactly.
You have reached the outer limits. And
So
I had to sit there and play the tune in my head.
the aliens came down and they like healed us and they gave us a whole bunch of stuff and they gave us this book in their handwriting and then they started offering humans to come visit their planet and finally the scientist, it's his turn to go on the spaceship, so he starts climbing up the ladder and his assistant goes, we translated the book. The book's called To Serve Man, and it's a cookbook. And the alien kind of prods the guy up the rest of the stairs. And the next scene, you see him locked in a room, and the alien is like, "Come on, you wanna eat? You don't want to lose all your weight."
I've seen some weird outer limits where this one guy was trying so hard. I know I shouldn't keep going. Derailed again. This one guy was trying so hard to break through this portal into another life because it had a woman and two beautiful children, and he wanted them to be his. And he worked so hard, and finally, when he got to the other side of that window, that portal, the sun started to set, and their mouths were bigger than their whole head. They opened up and just devoured him. The outer limits. Thank you guys. We will bring you some more weird shit in a week's time. We don't know what, but again, in the comments, leave what you think would be interesting for us to look at. And yeah. I'm going to tell you to slap, hit, kick, bite, lick, tap, or whatever you want to do to whatever button you like to do on your way out.
Subscribe, comment, like. If you want to see a big collection of a lot of interesting videos, swing over to my channel.
I am going to go back and toss the link in the description. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It has been an hour and a half. It has been a Saturday. It has been a blast. We have discussed the Blue Planet project in, well, very little, very, very little detail. We must move on and fuel up.
Have a great weekend. What's left of it.
My audios aren't working. I screwed shit up. Thank you, everybody, and good night.